Hi everyone, we are Group 5 and we are presenting on the topic education sector, particularly higher education. I'll introduce the members and then move on to the presentation. So we have Anasuya, Dheeraj, Harshit, Rahul, Savni, Vedika and myself Devika. Moving on to the first slide, which is an overview about the Indian education sector, particularly the higher education. We know that India holds an important place in the global education industry. It has one of the largest networks of higher education institutions in the world. If you look at the market size, we can see that India has world's largest population of about 500 million in the age bracket of 5 to 24 years, providing the greatest opportunity for education sector. There are 37.4 million students enrolled in higher education in 2019. Besides, India is already in the middle of the demographic dividend with a surge in its younger and working age population, which is estimated to become the world's largest by 2030. Now let's talk about global enrollment ratio, that is GER. A GER of less than 15% means that the higher education is seen as an elite system where access to higher education is limited and is perceived as a privilege. If it is between 15 and 50%, it is regarded as a mass system where higher education is seen as a right for those with certain formal qualifications. In India, we have a GER of higher education 26.3% in financial year 2019, which definitely means that India is in the initial stages of higher education massification. The education sector has seen various reforms and improved financial outlays in recent years that could possibly transform the country into a knowledge haven. With human resource increasingly gaining significance in the overall development of the country, development of education infrastructure is expected to remain the key focus in the current decade. India has 100% FDI allowed in the education sector, and there are several initiatives boosting the higher education sector, like the Authority Bill for Higher Education, the Foreign Education Institution Bill, to name a few. Moving on to the next slide, we can see that some of the initiatives, especially taken by the government of India. The cabinet chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi approved the National Education Policy 2020, making way for large-scale transformational reforms in higher education sector. There has been other initiatives also like Skill India Mission 2015, which has come in place aimed at skilling 400 million Indian youths by 2022. So if you look at the road ahead, it is very clear that the Indian education industry is in the path of adopting transformative and innovative approaches in higher education. India aims to achieve 50% GER and hopes to emerge as the single largest provider of global talent, with 1 in 4 graduates in the world being a product of the Indian higher education system.
If we have a look at the external environment analysis of the higher education industry, we observe that in the political aspect, the government has launched various initiatives like the Skill India Mission, as well as given various scholarship opportunities to promote higher education among the people. In the last decade, public-private partnership has also seen a rise. With the new economic changes, the emergence of international school segment as well as international collaborations has also seen a rise. The private schools are now adopting the new franchisee models. If we look at the social trends, it has been observed that the dropout rates among the girls have increased considerably as compared to the boys. There are new technological investments in this sector. A lot of MOOCs or virtual educations have seen a rise, especially during the COVID times. The Government of India has also launched various applications for the mock practices of the various national assessment tests like JEE. For JEE, they have launched a national test Abhyas application. There are various regulatory bodies like UGC, AICTC, and AAC which acts for the legal aspect. They are mainly responsible for the accreditations of the private as well as the deemed universities. To have a environment sensitive approach, the curriculums are also being designed keeping this in mind, as well as to reduce the wastage of natural resources like paper or stationaries. The technological or the online mode has seen a rise. If we look at the strengths of this industry, we see that there is a huge demand as there are 150 million students in the age group of 18 to 23 years of age, as well as there is a considerable increase in the income of the middle class families. Because of this, we can say that India has a huge potential to become a global hub in the Asia-Pacific region. Also, there are ample opportunities in the R&D area. The weakness of this industry can be counted as the lack of infrastructure and the trained faculties to keep up with the increasing demands, as well as the complex nature of the regulatory reforms. If India is able to overcome these challenges, The higher education industry has immense growth opportunities. The details about the new education policy will be taken up by Harshit.
So moving on, NEP 2020 was a welcoming change and a fresh news amid all the negatives surrounding the world in 2020. The announcement was purely unanticipated by many. So moving on to what the impact it will have on the higher education sector, the most significant highlight was the proposal to set up the Higher Education Commission of India, which is a single umbrella body for higher education, excluding the medical and legal education. It has four independent verticals: the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, General Education Council, Higher Education Grants Council, and National Accreditation Council. The second highlight of the proposal was to introduce a single university entrance exam conducted by the National Testing Agency. Earlier, to seek admission, a student had to go through multiple examinations, but if after the implementation of this plan, a student can give one entrance exam and get saved from the burden of many. Another policy was to allow universities to set up offshore campuses, as well as many foreign universities are now allowed to set up institutes in the country. The main focus was in having multidisciplinary college in every district by 2030, and it will not only renew the country's focus on arts, humanities, and other disciplines, it will also ensure that the students are skilled well for their career ahead. Finally, we can foresee that the gross enrollment ratio would be rising in the country, as we will allow multiple entry and exit options at the undergraduate level according to this education policy. Moving on to the next slide. Now I would talk about the impact of COVID on higher education. First and foremost has been the destabilization of all educational activities. The outbreak of COVID has compelled lockdown in every sector, including education. So various activities like admission, examinations, entrance tests, competitive examinations, as well as various board level examinations have to be postponed. The second one would be an impact on academic research and professional development. So in this regard, COVID-19 has had both negative and positive impacts. If we take the negative side, it has made impossible for researchers to travel and work together with others nationally and internationally. However, it has also given impetus for researchers to focus more on their theoretical aspects. Another point is that it has severely affected the educational assessment system, because most of the external examinations have been postponed and almost all have been cancelled in a variety of institutions. So many of the institutions have been managing the internal assessments through online mode. Finally, there have been reduced employment opportunities because many entrance tests, job recruitments, as well as other exams got cancelled, which created negative impact, which was a great challenge in the life of a student who is pursuing higher education. Moving on, the next slide would be taken up by Dheeraj.
So now, coming to the most emerging source of distribution, the edtech industry. The edtech industry helps in facilitating the transfer of learning through digital platforms. The edtech industry has seen immense growth in the last decade through fundings from various government institutions, companies, universities, etc. Apart from this, the growth has been credited to the increased affordability and accessibility of internet. Coming to the industry overview, it can be divided into two broad segments. The first can be K-12, which is from grade 1 to grade 12, and the next is post K-12, which is further divided into three broad segments. First is technical skilling, which is coding, etc. Next is test preparation, which includes preparation of exams like CAT, banking, non-banking, and various other exams. And the third is reskilling and certifications, which includes learning through various platforms like Coursera, Udemy, and getting certifications. The major players in the industry includes Byju's, Udemy, Coursera, Unacademy, Time, to name a few. Now talking about the key statistics, the number of startups in India is more than 4,000 and the industry worth is $14 billion as of now. The market is expected to grow by $3.5 billion at the end of 2020. The current user base is 90 million and which is expected to grow in 5 years by 6.3 times. Now, coming to the growth drivers of the edtech industry. So the first is increased accessibility. So due to the reduction in prices of internet and improved connectivity, these courses are now more easily accessible to students and students can learn on their own pace. Next is COVID impact. The COVID has given a huge rise to the industry. Startups has raised $795 million in the first half of 2020 as compared to $108 million in the entire previous year. Also, various schools, universities, and coaching centers are now going virtual, which again give rise to the edtech industry. Next is new education policy. One of the significant features of the new education policy is the knowledge creation bank, through which students can learn from online courses and get credits. So this will also give rise to the industry. Also, teachers are also being taught how to be more comfortable with the online medium because it is seen as the near future. Last is the technology. So the various technologies been introduced in this sector, which is blended learning formats, next-gen schools, deep technologies, offline support system, and virtual test prep by coaching centers. So next slide will be taken over by Rahul.
So Byju's as a company is focused on education sector, and the enabler for Byju's is considered to be technology. Also, Byju's operates majorly in two specific areas. The first one is the K-12 education, and the second one is test preparation for higher education like CAT, GMAT, IAS, and other exams. So Byju's has a parent company which is called Think and Learn Private Limited, and it was started in 2011. And there onwards, the company started getting a lot of funding from venture capitalists like Tencent, Secure Capital, and many others. And 2015, they finally launched the learning app that we know of. And 2017 was another turning point for Byju's because that was when they started updating the app in a much more modern way. They got their case study published in the Harvard Business School press, and many other things happened. And currently, Byju's has went on to become a decacon, and it is one of the biggest startups or decacons in India right now and across the globe as well. Now, quickly moving forward to the Porter's five forces for Byju's. So, talking about the bargaining power of buyers, this is where Byju's stands out, and it has a lot of power over the buyers because of the nature of its go to market strategy, which is direct selling. And the customers are currently, because of COVID, they are currently forced to use online learning, and because of the brand that Byju's has created, they have to try out Byju's. And because of the direct selling format, the company is able to practice things like differential pricing as well. Coming to the bargaining power of suppliers, this is where the company again outshines all other competitors. The company has collaboration with Lenovo and Samsung for hardware, that is the tablet they provide for loading the content. And then the company has collaboration with Western Digital for the memory cards they provide. And many other companies want to work with Byju's currently because of the vast scale that Byju's has to offer. So again, they cannot really bargain a lot with Byju's. The third and the most important thing is the competitive rivalry. So Byju has three main competitors or primary competitors, that is Topper, Extramarks, and Vedantu, because they operate in the segments where Byju's does, and their marketing strategies are very similar to Byju's.
Moving on to the SWOT analysis, the strengths are that the content is available, easily available at any place at any point in time, both for uploading the content as well as from learning the app. The second is it increases collaboration, might be scattered geographically. It also makes online books available digitally, many more online books available digitally. The fourth will be instant feedbacks can be provided online, as well as there's flexibility to use creative audio visuals to create content and explain concepts. The weaknesses would be that there's inconvenience due to technological glitches, compromises on a number of benefits that are naturally present in physical classrooms. There's also isolation of learners, which does not allow for a personal relationship to be built between students and teachers. Also, e-learning is incompatible for practical courses in higher studies. Moving on to the opportunities, there's an increase in the number, in the demand of online tutors due to COVID. Also, it opens a lot of doors for career diversification and growth. It helps students to learn at their own pace, even in the absence of a supervisor. Financially, also, there are many more opportunities provided to the teachers to take up several other jobs. It also saves time and provide opportunity for a better work-life balance. It also provides opportunities to pursue higher studies in spite of having various commitments like family commitment or other employment commitments. In cases of threats, a significant number of students and teachers are not willing to forego classroom style learning due to the fear that online teaching might not deliver as good results. Also, there's access to stable network and availability of laptop might be a concern at all times. Due to lack of awareness, this method is also not very widespread across the country, and also there's this issue of velocity of bandwidth. Can we move on to the next slide? Now, classrooms for tomorrow, impact of COVID on Byju's growth prospects. So the pandemic has immensely helped Byju's to grow and join the league of the 25 decacons along with the likes of TikTok, the Chinese ride-hailing app Didi, and Elon Musk's SpaceX. Also, in response to so many schools and colleges being shut down during COVID-19, Byju's has made its content available online for free for a certain period of time. This has helped increase the user base, the paid subscription, as well as the daily active users of its learning app. Analysts have even said that Bond Capital, which is commonly known for backing up top tech companies like Uber and Spotify, it is going to help Byju's to tap into the global market in near future.
Now, let's talk about 5C analysis of Byju's. First, company. Byju's spends heavily on R&D activities to preserve its leadership position in various product segments. Heavy investment in building IT network, marketing, product design, and process optimization is being done. Byju's has a strong culture of process and product innovation. Top management supports the innovative and creative ideas, and employees are encouraged to participate in the problem-solving process. Second, collaborators. Collaborators include the downstream and upstream value chain partners, business allies, community leaders, government, and others. To choose the appropriate collaborate partner, Byju's needs to evaluate the different value chain factors like flexibility, efficiency, agility, revenue sharing among the chain partners, strengths and weaknesses of possible collaborators. Some of the investors are Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, Sequoia Capital India, Sofina, World Invest, Tencent, etc. News partners are Business Insider, Your Story, TUI, Mint, On Manorama, ET, etc. Next is customers. Byju's learning app targets both high-end as well as low-end market segments. The organization decision to choose broader and multiple segments have expanded the scope of opportunities. The primary segment of the app is the family with children, which requires the learning app to do social, emotional, and functional jobs to keep the market segments happy and satisfied. Customers are price sensitive, and this price sensitivity, changing taste, preferences, and high health consciousness requires Byju's to invest in customer research activities and closely monitor their attitude and consumption behavior. Fourth is competitors, high substitute availability because of wide number of alternatives. Also, low economic and psychological switching costs exist. Example of competitors are Vedantu, Topper, Merit Nation, Khan Academy, etc. The current rivalry among the competitors is very high, which makes it difficult for Byju's to achieve the market growth objectives. Last is the context. Political context includes presence of governance system requires to study the changing policies. Presence in multiple markets increases the risk of political instability. Social context. Health conscious customers who worry about screen time imposes a risk to the app, whereas population growth and rising low-end market segments offer more opportunities. Economic context includes inflation and exerts a strong impact on the pricing structure of Byju's app. Presence in the multiple market requires marketing managers to adapt the strategies according to consumer behavior, which is different during recession and boom. Last, the technological context. The entrance of new market players and their investment in research and development requires the Byju's to break their intellectual property rights. The technological advancement has shortened the product life cycle, hence requiring to enhance its value chain efficiency. Technological development has also lowered production costs and increased the need to restructure the supply chain. Thank you.